Yes, this is a very improvised performance for me. I jumped in yesterday about to talk to Kitty, and I at once knew that I wanted to use this book. That is I think it's very apt for teachers to learn and see what you can do with literature, picture books, and children, and drawing. You have a lot of drawing details and yes, techniques to. And I would like to start with your background as a not hearing child in a hearing family, and the long period when they didn't know that you didn't heard them, and what it made to you and your inner life.
So first, hello to everyone, and very bravely come to listen to me in this sound. For me, it's very difficult, so I will try and stay focused. So I'm born half deaf, and like a lot of hard hearing, hard deaf children, they are extremely good to adapt in such a way that a lot of parents think that they do hear, because when you think of a baby when it's born, it's a revolution. We all unfortunately forgot about it, but we are amazing survivor. And how we manage to understand the sounds, the colors, what's going on, the bond, mother-father language. What does it mean? Someone saying something nice with a very harsh face, and someone who has a very nice face and saying something horrible. So I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what the hell are they trying to say. And in a good way, I started to read people very, very fast. I think it developed a very good instinct of, the way you stand, what you do with your hands, the way you chin up or chin out, or this is language, and wow. And of course, all this, I will use it. Often people say, you became an illustrator and a writer because you have bad hearing. And I'm like, well, not all illustrators, writers had bad hearing, so let's make it a bit clear here. I love all forms of art. I especially loved dancing, but I was very shy and very wild as a child. So I remember my first music lesson. We were singing. I was probably 4 or 5, and I had no clue how to sing. So I was sitting next to the other children, and they were singing along, and I was like, I just did the same thing. If everybody stood up, I would stand up. And so people assumed that I understood. I have to say there has been a lot of difficult things, very tough. People can be very harsh, they can be very mean. It gave me a huge empathy. So my empathy is really, really big, because I'm capable to be in your shoes, I hope, and I think quite quickly. So to become an illustrator and a storyteller and a writer and an artist and a mom, I think you have to be able to be inside the elements. Mm-hmm. If I draw air, if I draw a tree, you don't draw a tree from the top to the below. This little seed, this amazing magic, this incredible thing, you just put it in and just becomes a huge tree. I mean, I love magic for that, very, very much, because I believe in everything I don't see. Why do I do that? Because otherwise I'm not a storyteller. It's impossible to be really square and become a storyteller. A storyteller is something that you have to be able to reach the deepness and the lightness of like when you are swimming and you're not really knowing where you're going. You have to let things come towards you.
Yes, and I think you have developed an extra sensorial perspective on everything. You say, I have to know the tree, I have to observe it, but you don't. You are not drawing in nature, but you take it with you home, and then you take the tree forward and inside yourself.
It's a bit like David Hockney, which is a painter that I find quite fascinating, and he would sit for 6 hours looking at the landscape and just absorbing whatever. You know, when you look something a long time, things start to change colors and shapes, and things start to glow. No, I'm not crazy. I'm just. But it's and then you go home and then you try and do it like essential oil. You know, you because I'm not a photographer. I'm someone, and I like that word, is saying I'm a translator of what I see in front of me, and how am I going to translate it to the paper. Now, there's a very interesting fact, and I'm sure many of you know it. Sound doesn't exist, and colors doesn't exist. So what does it mean exactly? That means it goes through your brain, who translate colors, shapes it up, and so is the sound. So what I'm saying, that everything is a frequency. So to say that I believe this and I don't believe that, I find it difficult, a bit tricky to say that, because the ant won't see the same thing, or you know, the bear or the whale or the alien, why not? Maybe the ghost. All have a different perception, and I love to think who is actually watching me and who am I watching? To question each relationship that you have to any kind of form that is in front of you.
Yes, and you tell in this amazing book about your love for biology, and that biology is poetry for you, and that I think you can guess when you look at the role of nature in all Kitty's books. It's like a poetry, and it's very delicate and full of nuances. And then you also tell that you like to draw odd and tricky people, and not very beautiful all the time. And I got that one from Kitty once. Is this a method you have to collect people from your fantasy or imagination? Or
it's an interesting one, because I have this huge, and I'm very grateful for it, but I have this huge gift of having so many stories coming up to me. Maybe because I have to tell myself a lot of story, because I was very lonely between 0 to 6 years old. I didn't have a hearing machine. Everything was blurry. I'm not deaf, but it was blurry. And so to keep my brain busy, I kept questioning myself and telling myself stories. And then time passed, and I was very, I didn't trust people. I found them a bit. And so as the more I worked and the more I meet people, I started to fall in love with people. I find people amazing. They're like walking stories. And I always want to know, what is your story? And so when I can't do a book because I'm traveling, suddenly someone asked me to do a drawing for a museum or a poster, and then it gets more and more people over, and I just love the interaction. Who's doing what? Who's thinking? Who's happy? Who's not happy? Who looks happy? And then suddenly there would be probably a character would jump out. But it's not a method, because what I find very interesting in my process is almost never the same thing.
No.
It's kind of, you think it's worked this way, and then it doesn't. Sometimes I have the beginning of the story, sometimes I have the middle, sometimes I have the end, sometimes I have nothing, but I have an atmosphere. Or it's just
A place.
very difficult, different. And in this picture, you have this, there's a woman with long hair, and she got pointed teeth. And then there's this really adorable little girl next to her. And then I start to think, what is if you grow up with a borderline mother? Maybe a mother who went to prison, maybe a mother who'd been raped, maybe a mother who'd been, beaten, maybe a mother who'd been abandoned. And for 20 years I've been to so many schools and seen so many kids, and I always love to draw with them, not to teach them something. I really believe that we have to share the wonder of this life, but not to say it's wonderful. For me, that is very different. I think it's the experience. There's this beautiful woman called Rachel Carlson. She's this American ecology, 1960.
Silent Spring. Silent Spring.
Yes.
Yes.
And the one I read is Le Sens de la Merveille, the sense of the wonder. And the first chapter is just perfect. She's this biology, ocean person. And that night there's a big storm, and she had her nephew who's 6 months old, and she said, let's go and see the sea. And so she whacked this kid, goes to the sea, and they laugh because the elements is just crazy. That's what I'm trying to tell you, is it's more about sharing something beautiful, or sharing instead of saying, this is beautiful, which means that is not beautiful, which is very dangerous, I think. Who am I to say this is beautiful and this is not beautiful? I think we have to listen. I always love to say to the children that what do you think about, this is beautiful? And I say, what do you think? And then we can talk about it.
Yes. And this hairy woman, she lived here for some time in this big picture, yes. And suddenly she was developed to a book where the hair and the mythical hair of Medusa is very important. Will you tell us about, you are often connected to myth.
Yeah. We have wonderful legends, mythology, fascinating. The structure of the myths have a lot to do with psychology or with science or relationship. It gives you a tool of what it could be, to the dark side or the happy side. I started to get very interested in the runes. They're also full of storytelling. So for this book, I was fascinated by this woman, and I think I had a dream. I had a dream of Medusa, and it was quite, it's like a nightmare. It was quite horrible. I was walking towards a tomb, and I pushed over the top of the tomb, and she came out screaming with her snake eyes and her blue-green skin and her terrible eyes. And I felt so sorry for her. And I was really wondering, what happened to you? And then I started reading about it, and then realized that she was raped by Poseidon, who took a revenge of Athena, who was in the temple, virginity. And so she needed Medusa for like a priest, a virgin priest. There were 3 sisters, Tenno, Uriel, and Medusa. Medusa is the only one who can die. The 2 others are immortal. So Athena, to revenge not the uncle, because it's not possible, so to take a revenge of Medusa and turn them into snakes, eyes, nails, skin, and to not to be able to create a bond with the eyes. And so in this story, and actually, that's quite funny, Medusa will have 2 children. She's going to have, the first one is Chrysaor, a man with a sword, and the second one is a horse with wings. I don't know what they were smoking then, But okay, why not? So in my story, Medusa comes, she's Link from Chrysaor. And so you don't know what happened to this woman. And so her hair is not snakes, but they move like a magical thing. But it tells so many about, how you say, the mère dominante, when they don't let go their child.
Yeah.
Because she's so scared of this little girl to be damaged.
Very possessive.
Yeah, very possessive in a cordon umbilical you want to hold back because you're so scared. And so and I was fascinated by their hair and what does it tell and how you feel so protect, but also you get slowly tangled.
Strangled, yeah. And you also tell that of all your women, you have this Leslie figure and Annie from the Lakes, very strong, very lonely women with very special lives. But when you are connecting to your books, you say she is your closest character for yourself. You don't identify, but you have her quite close.
Yes and no. I think I am Medusa and I am the child.
Yeah.
I think you're always a bit of everything. That's what I love in people. They're not just one thing. And so in those characters for me it was also very, as a woman, very important to have not just pretty little girls. We are trained to be kind, to be polite, to be obedient. And I just want to show wild women. I mean, I was lucky to grow up with Pippi Longstocking and having Jane Eyre in English literature. And for me, it's important to have wild, not that beautiful. You know those women who are not that beautiful, but when they smile, they are so beautiful. That kind of beauty.
Mm-hmm. And nature here is also a sort of bond to Scandinavian nature and water and salt water and the ocean and Sweden and West Coast and Smögen and Akvarellmuseet on Tjörn. Is it in time when you were in Sweden that?
My grandfather was come from Smögen, and when I was a little child, we were in the summer in Smögen when it was not invaded by tourists. But it's amazing that all the things that you see as a child, you really keep them, and they will never leave you. So it's important to show beauty. I mean, I'm not beauty like wow, but some, just a light on the wall or certain trees. And I remember very clearly being completely shocked as a child on those flat walks. And it's a beautiful day. The sky is blue, and someone threw all golden coins on the water, and it's glittering. And all I was fascinated by the colors of the rocks. I mean, in principle, if you say draw rocks, everything will be gray, light pink. But if you look at it really carefully, suddenly you have other colors coming, and that's what it's about. So this is more, I think I realized also after Edvard Munch really shows this very clearly. And so when I went to Sweden after this book of Madame Medusa, because in Belgium they think I invent nature, but I invent nothing. And so Odile, my publisher, came to Sweden and but it's actually here. Walking around the rocks and the flat rocks and the sea and the water and.
Mm. And what I had, yes, and now you have been to the other side of the backyard of Sweden. It's Stockholm and Östersjön. It's a lovely book. I have your letter in.
It is not in Swedish yet, I hope. I'm so proud to have illustrated the Vipa Salterkraken of Astrid Lindgren. I got the manuscript 2 years ago, and this was confinement, and reading it, I really have a feeling of a shelter. She's so good at putting children in a shelter. And it's looked like a simple story, but it's everybody had a point of view.
Yeah.
And the main character is Chrowther, which is not just a pretty, sweet little girl, but it's actually, you know, she has the power of a storm.
Ja, det handlar om saltkråkan, men det har ni förstått ju. Ja. Och tjorven.
So I had to do 2 illustrations per chapter, and I decided to do like Ilan Wickland to actually draw the actors, because in 1964 it came out. I thought it was wonderful actors, and the colors are vintage and so nice. And then in 1970 it came out in French. And it got in print, and I was waiting for my book, and it was not coming, so I was very impatient. When is my book going to come, to be able to have it in my hands? And then it got lost, and it was not coming, and so I thought, surely an Astrid Lindgren trick. She plays tricks on me now and then. And then on the 4th of April, which is actually the day of my birth, in 1970, the day where I'm born, I received on the 4th of April the book. So it was like a kind of a loop, a very interesting loop.
Okay. We have 1 minute left. What would you tell the teachers how to start the children creating from inside themselves?
Well, I really think I think you should play and don't take drawing so seriously. I think lots of games, and it's not about I'm going to make a pretty picture. It's instead of giving them a phone in a restaurant, which I see everywhere, just play game. I do one little drawing, you do one drawing, I do a drawing, you do a drawing, and we have to see which one we add. So when you have 100, you have to find where's the one who's add. And just, like a playing thing. I think it's the most, or when you have an emotion and you can't express it, just draw it.
Mm. And our time is
Tack så mycket.
Tack så mycket.